Well, Algebra 2, this is our video key for our homework assignment on 8.6. That was our lesson on adding and subtracting rational expressions. So if you remember, our first step in doing these was to factor everything completely. We were then going to go on to find that common denominator. Then we combined our numerators, keeping that common denominator, and then finally we wrapped up the problem by simplifying. So let's take a look at number 1. Number 1, we have 2y over 10y minus 5x minus 2y over 10y. Well, step 1 is to factor everything, or at least to factor the denominators completely. Those are factored. And then we look for ways to make our fractions have a common denominator. Well, they already have a common denominator in 10y. So now we're going to combine our numerators. So 2y minus, put that second numerator in parentheses to help keep you from making a sign error. And then we keep our common denominator of 10y. So here's why I wanted to keep this numerator in parentheses, because we have to distribute that negative sign through the parentheses. So we're going to end up with 2y minus 5x. We're going to have minus a negative times a minus 2y. Two negatives make a positive, so we end up with plus 2y. And that's all going to be over 10y. So when we combine our like terms, 2y and 2y is going to be 4y minus 5x all over 10y. And that is our answer to number 1. Number 2, we have 2 over 16x minus x minus 5y over 16x. So our first step is to factor our denominators completely. They are already factored. They're monomials. Second, we need to manipulate our fractions to produce a common denominator. Well, we have a common denominator already in 16x. So now we're going to combine our numerators, keeping our common denominator. So I'm going to 2 minus. Make sure you put that second numerator in parentheses to avoid making a sign error. That'll all be over 16x. I need to distribute that negative sign through the parentheses. So I'm going to have 2 minus x. I got a double negative here. Two negatives make a positive, so I'll end up with plus 5y over 16x. And that will be it. That's my answer. There's no simplifying to do there. 2 minus x plus 5y over 16x is my answer to number 2. Number 3, we have m minus n over 15m plus n minus n over 15m. So first step, factor each denominator completely. That's already done. Step 2, we look for a common denominator. We already have a common denominator. So now we need to combine our numerators and then keep our denominators. So we're going to have m minus n plus m minus n. That's all going to be over a common denominator of 15m. So when we're combining these, distributing that positive through, I'm just going to have m minus n plus m minus n. That's all going to be over 15m. We need to combine our like terms. I'm going to have a positive m plus a positive m. That'll give me 2m. I have a negative n minus an n. That's going to give me minus 2n. All over our common denominator of 15m. That is as far as we're going to be able to reduce that. So here's my answer, 2m minus 2n over 15m. That is our answer for number 3. Number 4, we have x plus 6y over 20y plus 5x over 20y. Step 1, we factor each denominator completely. They are already factored. They're monomials. Step 2, we look for a common denominator. We do have a common denominator in 20y. So now we combine our numerators, keeping our common denominator of 20y. So I'm going to combine like terms. I'm going to have 6x, x plus 5x is So 6x plus 6y over 20y. If I factor a common denominator out of the top, I'm going to factor a 2 out. So 2 times 3x plus 3y, that would be over 20y. So I can reduce the 2 over 20. The 2 will wipe out and 2 goes into 20 10 times. So I'm going to rewrite the answer over here. I'm going to have 3x plus 3y, and that's going to be over 10. There's my answer to number 4, 3x plus 3y over 10. I forgot my y. 3x plus 3y over 10y. That is my answer to number 4. Number 5, I have 6 over 3x squared minus 3 over 2x squared. Step 1 is always to factor the denominator. There's no factoring to be done. I have 2 monomials. Step 2, I look for a common denominator. I don't have a common denominator yet, but I can manipulate those to produce a common denominator. My common denominator I'm going to have is 6x squared. So I'm going to multiply my left fraction, my first fraction here, by 2 over 2. So I'm basically just multiplying it by 1, but by multiplying by 2 over 2, I'm going to produce a common denominator of 6x squared over here. I'm going to multiply this side by 3 over 3. So when I get, let me finish that, I'm going to have 2 times 6, I'm going to have 12 up top over 6x squared. And I'm going to subtract, let's see, 3 times 3 is 9, and I'm going to have 6x squared. So now I have my common denominator of 6x squared. So I'm going to combine my numerators. So I will have 12 minus 9, keeping my common denominator of 6x squared. 12 minus 9 is 3. So 3 over 6x squared. I can reduce this common factor of 3. I have 1 over 2x squared. There's my answer for number 5. Here's number 6. I have 5 over 6x plus 5y over 2y. When I'm adding rational expressions, I'm always looking to factor each denominator completely. I have 2 monomials, so I can't factor any. So I'm going to look for a common denominator. I have 6x and 2y. What common denominator can I get out of that? Common denominator will be 6xy. My greatest common multiple of 6 and 2 is 6, and then I just need to multiply this by y to get 6xy. I'm going to need to multiply this by 3x to get 6xy. So let's go ahead and multiply those. Multiply my first fraction by y. Multiply my second fraction by 3x over 3x. And what that'll end up doing is giving me, over here, I'll end up with 5y over the denominator of 6xy. And I'm going to add to that, when I multiply 5y times 3x, I get 15xy. And that's going to be over my common denominator of 6xy. 2y times 3x is 6xy. So now I have that common denominator I was looking for of 6xy. So I'm going to combine my numerators, 5y plus 15xy. That will be over my common denominator of 6xy. The only common factor I have in 5y, 5xy, and y is the y is present in all of those, so I can cancel the y out of each one. And I'll be left with 5 plus 15x over 6x. And there is my answer to number 6, 5 plus 15x over 6x. Okay, number 7, we are given 5x over 2 plus 3x over 6x plus 6. So our first step is to factor each denominator completely. So I'll have 5x over 2 plus 3x over, I'm going to factor greatest common factor on my denominator there. I'm going to get 6 times x plus 1. Now I got to look for my common denominator. So I have the 2 here. If I were to multiply this 2 times 3, in parentheses x plus 1, this is going to be my common denominator here, 6 times x plus 1. So I'm going to, rewrite 5x over 2 plus 3x over 6 times x plus 1. What can I multiply 2 by to get the 6 times x plus 1? I actually would multiply that by 3 times x plus 1. If I multiply 3 x plus 1 times 2, I'm going to end up with 6 x plus 1, which is what I want, 6 times x plus 1. But whatever I multiply the bottom by, I'm going to have to multiply the top by, so 3 times x plus 1. So let's simplify that a little bit. I'm going to have 3 times x plus 1 times 5x, so that's going to be 3 times 5x, 15x, x plus 1 is my numerator over here. And my new denominator, like we said, will be 6 times x plus 1. So I'm going to be adding to that 3x over 6 times x plus 1. So all I did here was just multiply my bottom, my denominator of 2 times 3 times x plus 1. That got me 6 times x plus 1. Then I had to multiply my numerator of 5x, also times 3 times x plus 1. That got me 15x times x plus 1. 3 times 5x is 15x. So you can see how that math worked out there. Now I've got my common denominator. So I combine my numerators. So I'm going to have 15x times x plus 1 plus 3x. That's combining my numerators. And I'm going to keep my common denominator of 6 over x plus 1. Don't make the mistake of canceling out those x plus 1s. You can't do that yet because you have an addition problem here. If they were all multiplication, that'd be fine. But when you got that addition in there, you can't do that. So I'm going to carry that down over here. I'm going to have 15x times x plus 1 plus 3x, and that's all over 6x plus 1. I just rewrote it down here. So what can I do now? Well, I'm going to try to do some more simplifying. I'm going to factor that 15x through there. So when I do that, I will get 15x squared plus 15x plus, my 3x was already there, over 6 times x plus 1. So when I combine like terms, I'm going to end up with 15x squared plus 18x all over 6 times x plus 1. All right, I'm going to erase what I got here. So if you need to pause and write some of this down, do that. But I'm going to keep simplifying this fraction. I'm going to move it up top here so I've got some room to work with. All right, so I have 15x squared plus 18x over 6 over x plus 1. All right, I'm going to factor a greatest common factor out of the top here. I'm going to factor out, looks like 3x. So when I factor 3x out of the top, I'm going to be left with 5x plus 6 inside the parentheses, and then my denominator is still 6x plus 1. Is there anything I can cancel out here? I can on the outside here, 3 and 6. That 3 just becomes a 1, and 3 goes into 6 2 times. That's about it. That's about as far as I'm going to be able to cancel or factor that down. I'm going to have 5x plus 6 over 2 times x plus 1. There's my answer for number 7. X times 5x plus 6, 2 times x plus 1. Here's number 8, 2 over m plus 5 plus 5 over m minus 6. First step is to factor the denominators completely. Those are already factored. There's no greatest common factor there to pull out, so we're completely factored there. Now I need to look for a common denominator. What I'm going to have to end up doing is multiplying this m plus 5 times m minus 6. And I'm going to end up multiplying this m minus 6 times m plus 5. And it's going to end up giving me a common denominator of m plus 5 times m minus 6. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to multiply this first fraction times m minus 6. I'm going to use parentheses here to keep me from getting in trouble. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So I'll also be multiplying that top by m minus 6. Over here, I'm going to be multiplying that denominator by m plus 5. And whatever I do to the denominator, also will have to do to the numerator. So there's my setup to get my common denominator. So my new numerator here is going to be 2 times m minus 6. My denominator is going to be m minus 6 m plus 5. I'm going to add to that. Over here I'm going to have 5 times m plus 5. And my denominator will be m minus 6 m plus 5. All right, so now I've got those two fractions set up with common denominators. So now I can combine my numerators, keeping my common denominator. So I'll get 2 times m minus 6 plus 5 times m plus 5 all over my common denominator. Do not make that mistake of canceling out here. You can't cancel out because it's an addition problem up top. It's not multiplication. Let's see if we can simplify what we got going on up top here. We'll have, if I distribute that 2 through, I'll get 2m minus 12. If I distribute that 5 through, I get plus 5m plus 25. So I am going to be able to simplify it a little bit. So minus 6m plus 5 is still my denominator. What's my new numerator going to be when I combine these? I combine 2n and 5m, I get 7m. I combine negative 12 and 25, and I get a positive 13. I'm going to get 7m plus 13 over m minus 6, m plus 5. And there is my answer for number 8. I have 7m plus 13 over m minus 6 times m plus 5. Number 9, I'm given 5 over 2x minus 10, and I'm going to subtract from that 3 over 2x. First step is to factor each denominator completely. This one's already factored as much as we can. However, we can pull a greatest common factor out of this first one. So I'm going to have 5 over, I'm going to pull out that greatest common factor of 2. I'm going to get x minus 5. So 2 times x minus 5 is my factor denominator in my first fraction. Second fraction remains 3 over 2x. Second step, I have to look for that common denominator. If I have 2 times x minus 5 here, I'm probably going to need to multiply this by an x. And I'm going to need to multiply this over here by, I think, x minus 5. I get 2x times x minus 5 over here, 1 over 2x, x minus 5 over here. Good. Just had to take a second to look at that. So my common denominator is going to end up being 2x, x minus 5. So I'm going to be multiplying this 2x minus 5 times x. I'm going to be multiplying this 2x times x minus 5. So whatever I do on the bottom, I have to do to the top. So same there. So let's go ahead and work that out. Top, my new numerator over here will be 5x. Over here I'm going to have 2x, x minus 5. I'm going to subtract from that 3x minus 5 over 2x, x minus 5. All right, so I do have a common denominator now. Now I need to combine my numerators, keeping my new common denominator. So I'm going to end up with 5x minus 3x minus 5 all over 2x, x minus 5. I'm going to distribute this negative 3 through my parentheses. Kind of see if I can simplify that some more. So I get 5x minus 3x. I'm going to have a negative 3 times a negative 5. That gives me a plus 15. That's all going to be over 2x times x minus 5. I'm running out of room, so I'm going to move that up top again. So if you need to pause and write this down, please do so. I'm going to rewrite this fraction up here, so I'll end up with 5x minus 3x plus 15 all over 2x, x minus 5. So I can combine like terms up top. 5x minus 3x is 2x. 2x plus 15 all over 2x times x minus 5. And that'll be our answer here. Don't make that mistake of trying to cancel out the 2x over 2x, because this is not a multiplication problem up there. So it's not a factor. It's an addition problem up there. So I have 2x plus 15 over 2x times x minus 5. Okay, our final problem, number 10, we are given 3m over 15m squared plus 6m. We're going to add to that 6 over 3. So we need to factor our denominators. This denominator, we can't factor that one, but we sure can here. We can pull a greatest common factor out of there. So I'll have 3m still in my numerator. So I'm going to pull out 3m in the denominator, it looks like, as well. And I'll end up with 5m plus 2 when I factor that out. 15m squared. Yep. Okay, so I factored my denominator over here. Now I need to look for a common denominator. So looks like this is going to be it. This is going to be a common denominator. What do I have to multiply this denominator here to get this? I'm going to multiply that by m times 5m plus 2. That's what I'm going to be multiplying that by. And whenever I do the denominator, I also have to do the numerator. So I'll end up with m times 5n plus 2 in the numerator. All right, so let's go ahead and do the math on this. We'll get, this doesn't change over here yet. We need to multiply 6 through there. I'm going to get 6m times 5n plus 2. That's my new numerator. And my denominator will be 3m times 5m plus 2. So I do have my common denominators here. That should be a plus sign, I'm sorry. So I have my common denominators here. So now I can combine my numerator. So I'm going to get 3m plus 6m times 5m plus 2, all that over 3m times 5m plus 2. I can't see anything I can factor out immediately, so I am going to add something, or I'm going to distribute this 6m through and see if I can't simplify that. I'm going to do that by moving up top, so make sure you pause and rewrite this in your notes if you need to. So I'm going to have 3m plus 6m times 5m plus 2 in my numerator. My denominator, I have 3m times 5m plus 2. Okay, so I've rewritten this bottom fraction up top, so I can erase this so I got some room to work with. I'm going to distribute that 6m through and see if I can't do some more simplifying. So I have 3m plus 6m times 5m is 30m squared, and 6m times 2 is 12m. That is over 3m times 5m plus 2. Combine like terms up top, I will get, looks like I'm going to have 30m squared and 3m plus 12m, that is 15m. I have that over 3m times 5m plus 2. Okay, I can pull a common factor out of the top here. If I pull out 15m, I'll be left with 2m plus 1. And I still have my denominator of 3m over 5m plus 2. Now, I can reduce my 15 and my 3. Those have a common factor of 3. My 3 just becomes 1. 15 becomes 5. And I have an m up top and bottom. I can cancel those out. So I'm going to be left with 5 times 2m plus 1 over 5m plus 2. And here's my answer to number 10. 5 times 2m plus 1 over 5m plus 2. So hopefully going through these helped understand if you might have been stuck on something, or if you need a little help on the problem. If not, please email me so we can get together via Zoom or what have you and work these out. So.